Long before movie audiences met Don Corleone, there was a real man whose influence reached far beyond the streets of New York. His name was Frank Costello, and unlike many gangsters of his era, he did not build his power through fear alone. He built it through respect, patience, and connections that stretched into the highest levels of society. Born in Italy and raised in America, Costello grew up during a time when organized crime was transforming from scattered street gangs into powerful criminal empires. While other mobsters gained reputations as ruthless killers, Costello chose a different path. He understood that a bullet could remove one enemy, but influence could control hundreds of people at once. By the 1930s and 1940s, Costello had become one of the most powerful figures in the American Mafia. Politicians sought his support. Businessmen wanted his approval. Even people who had never met him knew his name. Behind closed doors, he was often called the Prime Minister of the Underworld because of his ability to negotiate, persuade, and maintain order among powerful crime families. Unlike the hot-headed gangsters who constantly fought for territory, Costello believed that stability created wealth. He preferred meetings over gunfights and agreements over bloodshed. This approach earned him enormous influence, but it also created resentment among ambitious rivals who believed power should belong to younger and more aggressive men. One of those rivals was Vito Genovese. Genovese had spent years waiting for an opportunity to take control. While Costello focused on maintaining peace, Genovese quietly built alliances and gathered supporters. To him, Costello represented the old way of doing business. The future, he believed, belonged to men willing to use force whenever necessary. As whispers of discontent spread through the underworld, Costello began hearing troubling rumors. Trusted associates warned him that powerful figures were meeting without his knowledge. Old allies suddenly became distant. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. For the first time in years, Frank Costello sensed danger. He had survived gang wars, government investigations, and countless challenges throughout his rise to power. Yet this threat felt different. It was hidden in shadows, moving quietly among people he once trusted. As winter settled over New York, Costello looked out over the city he had helped shape. He knew that somewhere, someone was planning a move that could change everything. What he did not know was that the conspiracy against him had already begun. And very soon, a gunman would be waiting in the darkness. By 1957, the rumors were impossible to ignore. For months, Frank Costello had watched the atmosphere around him change. Men who once greeted him warmly now seemed cautious. Trusted associates avoided eye contact. Conversations became shorter, and old alliances felt fragile. The signs were clear. Someone was preparing to challenge his authority. That someone was Vito Genovese. Genovese had spent years building support behind the scenes. He believed the Mafia needed stronger leadership and saw Costello's influence-based approach as a weakness. While Costello still commanded respect, Genovese was gathering loyal followers who were eager for change. Then came the night that would alter Mafia history. On May 2nd, 1957, Costello returned to his apartment building in Manhattan after a long day. It was a routine evening, and nothing seemed unusual. As he entered the lobby, he walked toward the elevator, unaware that danger was waiting just a few steps away. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. The man was Vincent the Chin Gigante, a loyal supporter of Genovese. He approached Costello quickly, raising a pistol. "Hey, Frank," he shouted. Costello turned instinctively toward the voice. A gunshot exploded through the lobby. The bullet struck Costello's head, but not in the way the assassin intended. Instead of killing him instantly, it grazed his scalp and tore across the side of his head. The impact knocked him off balance, and blood began running down his face. Believing the job was done, Gigante fled into the night, but Frank Costello was still alive. Dazed and injured, he somehow managed to stay conscious. Within minutes, police and medical personnel arrived. News of the attack spread rapidly across New York. The most powerful mafia boss in America had been targeted in a public assassination attempt. As Costello recovered in the hospital, investigators questioned him repeatedly. Did he know who was responsible? Costello's answer became legendary. "I don't know," he calmly replied. Whether he truly didn't know or simply chose not to say has remained a mystery for decades. But behind closed doors, Costello understood exactly what had happened. The attack was more than an assassination attempt. It was a message. Someone wanted him removed from power. Someone believed his time was over. Lying in his hospital bed, Costello faced a decision that would determine the future of the Mafia. He could fight back and plunge New York into a bloody war, or he could choose another path. The entire underworld waited to see what the old boss would do next, and his decision would shock everyone. The entire Mafia world expected Frank Costello to strike back. For decades, the rules of organized crime had been simple. If someone tried to kill a boss, retaliation was inevitable. Blood demanded blood. Most men in Costello's position would have launched a violent campaign against their enemies, turning New York into a battlefield. But Frank Costello was not most men. As he recovered from the assassination attempt, he spent long hours reflecting on the empire he had built. He had accumulated wealth, influence, and respect that few men could ever imagine. More importantly, he understood something many younger gangsters did not. Every war creates winners for a moment and losers forever. A conflict with Vito Genovese would leave countless men dead. Families would be torn apart. Law enforcement would intensify its pressure. Even if Costello won, the victory could destroy everything he had spent a lifetime creating. So he made a decision that stunned both allies and rivals. Instead of fighting for power, he stepped away from it. Costello quietly informed key Mafia figures that he would retire from active leadership. The move shocked the underworld. Many had expected revenge. Others had expected a brutal struggle for control. Almost nobody expected the most powerful boss in America to walk away voluntarily. Vito Genovese got what he wanted, the throne. But Costello left with something even more valuable: respect. While Genovese ruled through fear and ambition, Costello remained a living legend. Mafia bosses continued to seek his advice. Politicians still listened when he spoke. Even men who now served other leaders recognized that Costello possessed a wisdom few could match. In retirement, he lived more quietly, avoiding the spotlight that had followed him for decades. Yet his influence never truly disappeared. His name carried weight wherever organized crime was discussed. Years later, when writers and filmmakers searched for inspiration to create one of the greatest fictional mafia bosses ever seen, they looked toward men like Frank Costello. His calm demeanor, his preference for negotiation over violence, and his ability to command respect without raising his voice became qualities audiences would recognize in Don Corleone. The irony was impossible to ignore. The assassin's bullet had failed to kill Frank Costello, but it had changed his life forever. Instead of dying in a war for power, he chose survival. Instead of chasing revenge, he chose legacy, and that may have been his greatest victory. Long after the gunshots faded and the power struggles ended, Frank Costello remained what he had always been, a man who understood that true strength is not measured by how many enemies you destroy, but by knowing which battles are worth fighting. That lesson ensured that while others ruled the Mafia, Frank Costello became immortal in history.